A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Well, especially for Tasmanian listeners, you'll know that your state election is coming up on the 23rd of March. A general election for the House of Assembly, and of course Tasmania has 5 divisions: Bass, Braddon, Clark, Franklin and Lyons. And for each division, 7 members this time will be elected to serve a term of office up to 4 years. Well, let's get some insight into a way that as a Christian believer, you can get your own understanding of what's going on and where the churches fit, what the Christian ethics are that are being applied to some of the policies being talked about in the lead up to the election. Mike Southon is Executive Director of the organisation called Freedom for Faith. They're planning to support churches running candidate forums in Tasmania. Mike, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Mike, so far as the issues, some might be saying, what's the big deal here? There must be some pretty big issues in Tasmania that voters will be up against and casting their ballots on the 23rd of March. What are the biggest things that are that are front of mind for Christians?
In every state election, there's always some interesting things to talk about. And particularly in Tasmania at the moment, housing affordability, as it is across the entire country, is a big issue. And so in poker machine reform is always an ongoing conversation in Tasmania. From a more particularly Christian focus, we want to make sure that faith-based organisations can continue to live out their mission, employ people who agree with their faith and operate according to their faith. And there is an ongoing conversation about conversion therapy and what legislation will work best in Tasmania.
And of course, some of those issues that we talk about in various other states, they're really front and centre on the agenda for discussion and for legislation in Tasmania. And for Christian parents who've been hearing about these things happening in Victoria or in the ACT, Tassie is also in the firing line to take away some of those rights that we've come to expect. These things make this election pretty important, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Particularly around the religious freedom issues, it's important to be encouraging our major parties and the minor parties in Tasmania to be actually thinking through what are the implications of some of the things they're suggesting, and how can they protect religious freedom and protect families and parents being able to talk to their kids, all those sorts of things that we hold dear.
It was a snap election that's been called, and so for organisations like yours, Freedom for Faith, and you're there talking about the Christian issues surrounding a bunch of things that are going to potentially change the landscape of the way Tasmania even functions when you talk about how important those things are. It was a snap election, so there's not a lot of time to make preparation here. You're partnering with a number of churches to get these candidate forums up.
Yes, we're working with the heads of the major denominations so that we have one forum in each location and then inviting all the churches, all the Christians to come and listen. It also makes it easier for the politicians. They only have to turn up once and answer the questions once. We've been working with Anglican, Catholic, Baptist, Presbyterian, ACC, you name it, and helping them to find the right church, helping them to come up with a model of how you run a candidate forum. And as you said, it's only been 2 weeks since the election's been called, so we've been trying to do it at a bit of a rush.
So you'll have church leaders running these forums, you'll have candidates arriving, and church leaders will be asking the questions. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, so there will be a couple of set questions that are being written by heads of churches, and there's going to be given to the candidates ahead of time, so they know what they're going to be asked and they can answer. And then the second half of each forum will be questions from the floor and giving the people who are just turning up a chance to ask their own questions.
And of course, candidates who are there on stage and they've been courageous enough to turn up. In fact, they're privileged to be able to sit before an audience, because candidates sometimes struggle to get an audience. So they're sitting in front of that audience and they're being asked the questions. Those particularly insightful questions around conversion therapy or those issues that affect faith-based institutions and schools. I mean, asking them, you'll be able to read body language, you'll be able to hear those responses that are coming straight from the horse's mouth when you're intending to cast your vote for that candidate.
Absolutely. And that's what's really important is in many cases, we like a party because of its position on one thing or another thing, and we want to actually think through all the issues. And we want to see what candidates really think about us. But it's also really helpful for the candidates. As you said, it is really hard to get a group of people together who have a specific demographic, find out exactly what their concerns are, and answer them. So it's a great opportunity. And all candidates are being invited, all the major parties and the minor parties are being invited, and it gives them an opportunity to go, oh, okay, this is what you're worried about. Oh, okay, I can respond to that. I can give you an answer to that.
And of course, it's quite clear when they can't give you an answer or whether there's an ignorant response that they didn't even know that was a serious thing that Christians in the community were thinking about.
Yes. And so we are giving the set questions to the candidates well ahead of time and to their party officers so that they should have an answer. But it just shows whether they are paying attention to us. And that shows something, doesn't it?
It even says something for the candidate and for the party when the candidates turn up for these forums. Sometimes candidates or parties don't turn up. That speaks a loud message too, doesn't it?
It does. And we've been sending out invitations. I've seen churches sending out invitations over the past day. And there's been some good response so far from possibly parties you wouldn't expect to be keen to turn up, who want to front up and talk to us. So that's encouraging too.
So there's 5 divisions in Tasmania: Bass, Braddon, Clark, Franklin and Lyons. I mentioned those earlier. Most of those are going to be easily accessible, but hey, there's a little bit of an issue with the Braddon electorate. How does that work?
There's a couple of electorates that are very funny shaped. Braddon spreads quite a lot over the state, as does Lyons, and Franklin is frankly an odd shape as well. So each of these events, we are planning to either have them live streamed or recorded, preferably live streamed so that you can watch it, or if it's recorded, you can see it the next day on the website. All of this information is available on the website, which is easy to remember, meetyourcandidates.org.au.
I know there'll be a lot of listeners who are thrilled to hear that you're working with the major denominations. Which ones are actually a part of what you're doing with Freedom for Faith?
The group is expanding every time I talk to another denomination, but I have been talking with Anglican and Catholic, Baptist, Presbyterian, ACC, Hillsong, Seventh-day Adventist. I suspect I've forgotten one or two, but we are growing every day, and every denomination is keen to be part of this because this is an opportunity for us to speak as the combined Christian church and say, these are things that we're worried about. The denominational differences don't make a difference.
How significant is it, Mike, that you're going to be using local churches here for these Meet the Candidate forums? Because, you could go to a neutral venue, but there's something about being in a church that speaks about the Christian community, that speaks about a stake in the ground, and there's a history that goes along with those churches planted where they were. How significant is it, do you think, having these in churches?
I think it's very significant. The church is a local thing. It is people coming together every Saturday, every Sunday, meeting together. It's an important idea that politicians want to meet people who are in their electorate, and these are the Christians of your electorate, and we know it because they meet every Sunday in a church in your electorate. So the locationness, the locality of the Christians, of the church, is a really important political reality too. And it makes it just a really powerful way for us to speak to MPs, saying, this is us, come to our house, come talk to us, it's going to be friendly, it's going to be kind, we're loving people, have a shot.
And just quickly on the Tasmanian situation, because they're increasing the number of representatives in this coming snap state election. What sort of opportunity does that offer for Christians making views known ahead of this election with those candidates?
Well, on pure political maths, to get a seat, you probably need about 8,000 votes. So if we get 300 Christians into a room and a few hundred others who are going to be watching the live stream or looking at the recording afterwards, that is a massive percentage of the electorate. That's the sort of thing that gets listened to well. It also means that minor parties are far more significant than they are in other states who just have one candidate. So most states, New South Wales, Queensland, it's just red versus blue in every electorate. In this, we are going to have Labor, Liberal, Shooters and Fishers, Jackie Lambie Network, Greens. Everyone's going to be battling over these seats. So it means that dealing with independents and giving them an opportunity to speak is actually really very important.
Well, we're only just over a few weeks away from the Tasmanian state election. You've got a website. Now, no doubt with those 5 electorate divisions, there's going to be those churches that you'll be saying, these are where the candidate forums are going to be held. They might be on different dates. Is there a website that people can go to find out where their local candidate forum is going to be held?
Yes, meetyourcandidates.org.au. And it lists all the events as they get locked down. We've got 4 out of 5 finally finalised and running. So meetyourcandidates.org.au.
Okay, for listeners who want to connect, Freedom for Faith. Now, there'll be listeners who have heard us talking with Freedom for Faith now over a number of years. The sorts of things you are interested in as an organisation and the sorts of things that you're standing for. Give us a little in a nutshell, Mike.
We exist to protect religious freedom in Australia and to help churches to advocate for themselves and on their religious freedom as well. So we love resourcing and enabling churches.
All right, activating the church to defend religious freedom. There's legal thinking and resources available at the website for freedomforfaith.org.au. But for that one, you might be interested in where the Meet Your Candidate Forum is going to be held in your electorate in Tasmania. Meetyourcandidates.org.au. That's meetyourcandidates.org.au. Mike Southon is Executive Director of the organisation called Freedom for Faith. Mike, thanks so much for a great update today on 2020.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.